The first crack in the illusion of my marriage didn't come with some dramatic revelation. No mysterious phone calls in the middle of the night, no lipstick-stained collar, and certainly no heartfelt confession from Samantha as she wrung her hands in guilt. No, it started with an abandoned shopping cart. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I had the rare privilege of being sent on a grocery run. Samantha had given me one of her famously vague lists, something for breakfast, something for dinner, and something fun. I still don't know what something fun is supposed to mean in grocery store terms. Cereal shaped like cartoon characters? A wheel of fancy cheese? A case of beer? That last one seemed the safest bet, so I added it to the cart and kept moving. Halfway down the aisle, I spotted a cart standing by itself next to the display of discount candles. Something about it caught my eye. Maybe it was the half-hearted way it had been left there, slightly angled like someone had abandoned it in a hurry. Maybe it was the contents too random, even by chaotic grocery store standards. A box of instant mashed potatoes, a single lime, 2 packs of batteries, and one of those ridiculous novelty birthday hats shaped like a crown. It was the shopping cart of someone who had either lost a bet or was preparing for the most depressing party ever. I was about to walk past it when I saw it. Right there, sitting on top of the mashed potatoes like some kind of ironic garnish, was a 6-pack of the same imported mineral water that Samantha had been raving about for the past 2 months. Now, I know what you're thinking. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But here's the thing. Samantha never drank that brand before. Ever. Then, out of nowhere, she started talking about it like it was sent from the heavens themselves. Oh, it's just so much crisper than normal water, she'd say, as if that were even a thing. She'd go on and on about how she'd tried it once at some new place downtown and how now she couldn't drink anything else. I didn't think much of it at the time. But now, staring at that 6-pack in a forgotten shopping cart, a question formed in my mind. Whose cart was this? And, more importantly, why did I have a sinking feeling I already knew the answer? I looked around the store, scanning the crowd. It was your typical Saturday afternoon chaos. Dads trying to remember what brand of yogurt their kids liked, old ladies examining produce like they were about to perform surgery on it, couples debating whether they needed another bottle of olive oil. And then I saw her. Samantha. She was 2 aisles over, standing with her back to me, deep in conversation with someone. That alone wasn't weird. Samantha was a talker. But there was something in the way she stood, one hand on her hip, the other gesturing slightly, her head tilted just so. That was her, "I'm amused by your nonsense," but in a flirty way stance. I inched closer, pretending to examine a box of pasta. That's when I saw him. Tall, broad-shouldered. The kind of guy who probably never had to Google how to fix a leaky faucet, because he just instinctively knew. He was laughing at something she said, and she was smiling back at him in a way that I hadn't seen in a long time. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a smile with history. And then, as if the universe was determined to hammer the point home, Samantha did something that sealed it. She reached into his cart, grabbed a bottle of the imported mineral water, and tossed it in like it was the most natural thing in the world. That's when I knew. This wasn't just some random grocery store chat. This wasn't an old acquaintance she happened to bump into. This was something else. Now, a smarter man, perhaps a more patient man, might have walked away, gathered his thoughts, and figured out a plan. But I am neither of those things. So I did what any self-respecting husband would do in my position. I took the abandoned shopping cart, and I rolled it straight up to them. "Hey, babe," I said, casually, as if I hadn't just caught her in the middle of whatever this was. "I found your cart." She turned, startled. And for the briefest moment, I saw it, that flicker of panic before she forced a smile. "Brandon, what are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" "You sent me to buy something fun, remember?" I gestured to my own cart. "So I got beer. Thought that was a safe bet." She laughed, but it was just a little too high-pitched. "Oh, right? Yeah, I just ran into an old friend." "Old friend, huh?" I turned to the guy, who had the decency to look vaguely uncomfortable. "You must be one of those friends I've never met before." He cleared his throat, extended a hand. Yeah, I'm Greg." "Greg? What a Greg?" "Greg," I repeated, shaking his hand with just enough enthusiasm to make it slightly awkward. "Nice to meet you. Looks like you two were having a good chat." "Oh, we were just catching up," Samantha said quickly. "Total coincidence, running into each other here." "Total coincidence," I echoed, nodding. Then I turned to Greg. "So, Greg, what's your stance on overpriced mineral water?" "Personally, I think it's just water in a fancy bottle, but Sam swears it's crisper." Greg's eyes flicked to Samantha, as if waiting for her cue. She jumped in before he could answer. You know what? I just remembered I have to grab something from the dairy aisle. Yeah? What's that? She hesitated. Milk. You're buying milk? Even though you told me this morning we had a full gallon? It was a small thing, but I saw the tiniest twitch in her expression. Greg, bless his deeply uncomfortable heart, took this as his exit cue. Well, it was great seeing you, Sam, he said quickly, already backing away. And nice meeting you, Brandon. And just like that, he was gone. I turned back to Samantha, who was now suddenly very interested in the nutritional label on a box of granola bars. So, I said, an old friend? Huh? She sighed. Brandon, don't start. Oh, I wouldn't dream of it, I said, with the best grin I could muster. Wouldn't want to ruin your totally accidental reunion. She didn't say anything. And in that moment, standing there in the middle of a grocery store, next to a cart filled with instant mashed potatoes and suspicious mineral water, I realized something. I didn't need to check her phone. I didn't need to track late-night texts or analyze her perfume choices. Because right then, I already knew the truth. I just wasn't sure if I was ready to hear it out loud yet. I had exactly two options. Option 1. I pretend I believe Samantha's little grocery store fairy tale about a random run-in with an old friend and go on with my day like a model husband who doesn't know how to connect the most obvious dots in human history. Option 2. I actually use my brain. I chose option 2. Now, I didn't immediately turn into some detective, lurking around corners and taking notes in a tiny notebook like I was solving the mystery of the century. I was just observant. That's what I told myself. It wasn't paranoia. It was simply curiosity. The kind of curiosity that kicks in when your wife of 8 years suddenly acts like she's been caught robbing a bank just because you walked up to her in the canned goods aisle. So, I did what any reasonable husband would do. I watched. Nothing crazy. I wasn't following her around town or snooping through her stuff like some suspicious sitcom character. I just started noticing things. For example, 3 days after the grocery store incident, Samantha suddenly became very invested in her workout routine. Now, to be clear, Samantha has always been into fitness. She has one of those expensive water bottles with motivational timestamps on the side, and she's the kind of person who owns separate sneakers for running and for casual athleisure. But she was a 2, maybe 3 times a week gym goer. Suddenly, it was every day, morning and night. Since when do you go twice a day? I asked, trying to keep my voice as casual as possible while she tied her shoelaces like she was about to run a marathon instead of drive 3 miles to an air-conditioned gym. She didn't even hesitate. Oh, I just feel like I have more energy lately. Might as well use it. Right. Because that makes perfect sense. Who doesn't suddenly develop an unstoppable wave of energy in their 30s for no reason? Happens all the time. Then, there was the new gym bag. This one was actually impressive. Samantha, in all her suspicious brilliance, didn't just show up with a new bag out of nowhere. She slowly phased it in. First, she borrowed one from a friend. Then she realized she needed her own. Then, when it finally appeared on the chair by the front door, it was like it had always been there. Almost like magic. This new? I asked, casually lifting the strap. Oh, yeah, I got it on sale last week, she answered, way too quickly. Nice. You still bringing your old one, too? She blinked. What? Your old bag, I said, giving her a perfectly innocent smile. Because I saw it in the laundry room yesterday. Guess you're switching between them. She hesitated for exactly half a second before recovering. Oh, yeah, just depending on the day. Lies. Not even good lies. Just regular, run-of-the-mill. I didn't expect you to actually pay attention, lies. But here's where things really got interesting. That Friday, Samantha had a girls' night. Now, normally, this wouldn't mean anything. Girls' nights happened all the time. The only reason this one stood out was because she announced it like it was some big, rare event. I haven't seen the girls in forever, she said at breakfast. We're finally all free on the same night, so we're gonna catch up. I chewed my toast. Didn't you see them last week? She blinked. What? Last week? I repeated, like I wasn't already fully enjoying this. When you went to that rooftop bar? Oh, yeah, but that was just me and Taylor. This time, it's everyone. Everyone. Yep. Where are you guys going? She hesitated for just a fraction of a second before answering. You know that new place downtown? The one with the big neon sign. I nodded slowly. Right. What time are you heading out? Around 7. I'll be back late, so don't wait up. It was all so carefully rehearsed. Right down to the casual tone, the innocent smile, the way she didn't over-explain. Except for one small problem. Taylor. Taylor is Samantha's best friend. And Taylor is also terrible at keeping secrets. So, naturally, I did what any loving husband would do. I called Taylor. "Hey, Brandon," she answered, her usual overly cheerful self. "What's up?" "Not much," I said. "Just wanted to check something real quick. Sam said you guys are having a girls' night tonight?" There was the briefest pause. Yeah. Cool. Where you all going?" Another pause. I could practically hear her brain buffering. "The usual place," she said, her voice way too careful. "The usual place?" I repeated. "Yeah, we always go there." "Right. And what time are you guys heading out?" 7? Maybe earlier." Taylor is many things. A great friend. A terrible liar. "Got it," I said, smiling to myself. "Sounds fun. Tell Samantha I said hi when you see her." Taylor laughed nervously. "Oh, yeah, will do." She hung up so fast I barely had time to say goodbye. So, to recap. Samantha lied about where she was going. Taylor tried and failed to cover for her. I had way too much fun watching it all fall apart in real time. At this point, I had all the confirmation I needed. Something was going on. The problem was, I still didn't know exactly what. But then, just when I thought things couldn't get any more ridiculous, the universe decided to hand me a gift. Because that night, at exactly 9:43 p.m., my brother called me. And the first thing he said was, "Why is Samantha at the bowling alley with some guy?" I'm not the kind of guy who jumps to conclusions. Really, I'm not. But when your brother calls you out of nowhere to casually drop the bomb that your wife, who is supposed to be at a girls' night, is actually at a bowling alley with some mystery man, you tend to react. At first, I thought maybe he was joking. My brother, Chris, has a sense of humor that can only be described as borderline legally problematic. He once convinced me for an entire week that our dad was secretly in witness protection because he just had that look. So naturally, I asked the obvious question. "You messing with me?" "Nah, man," he said, and I could hear the sound of pins crashing in the background. "I was just grabbing a beer with the guys, and there she was. Thought maybe she had a cousin or something I didn't know about. But unless you got a long-lost twin, I'm gonna go ahead and say that's not a relative." Now, let me clarify something. I don't bowl. Not because I have anything against it, but because the last time I went, I accidentally flung the ball backward and nearly took out an elderly man. It was a whole thing. Point is, there was no reason Samantha would ever think I'd show up at a bowling alley. So, I did the only logical thing. I went to the bowling alley. Now, I didn't storm in there like some jealous moron demanding answers. I had a plan. A very mature, strategic plan. Step 1. Don't be a moron. Step 2. Gather information. Step 3. Be just the right amount of petty. I walked in, pretending I was just some guy looking for a drink. The place was packed, birthday parties, loud teenagers, guys in polo shirts taking the game way too seriously. I scanned the lanes, taking my time, and then, there she was. Lane 14. Samantha was sitting on the bench, laughing at something the guy next to her said. And let me tell you, I don't know what this man said, but apparently it was the funniest thing she had ever heard in her life. She was practically in tears, clutching her stomach like she was going to collapse from the sheer force of hilarity. I've made Samantha laugh before. Many times. Never once has she looked like she needed medical assistance because of it. I kept walking, slow and casual, and found an empty table just a few lanes away. I could see them, but they couldn't see me. Perfect. Now, this guy wasn't Greg, Mr. Grocery Store water enthusiast. This was someone else. He was tall, dark-haired, and looked like he could probably build a deck without watching a YouTube tutorial. The kind of guy that doesn't just fix things, but makes a big show of it, standing with his arms crossed, nodding at his work like he just solved world hunger. Samantha was leaning in close, her hand resting lightly on his knee as she whispered something in his ear. He grinned, shook his head, and threw his arm around her shoulders like this was the most natural thing in the world. I took a deep breath. Step 1. Don't be a moron. Instead of marching over there and making a scene, I pulled out my phone. If she could text me a fake, having so much fun with the girls message, I could play that game too. Me, having fun? I watched her, waiting to see how long it would take her to notice. 3 seconds later, she pulled her phone out of her bag, read my message, and immediately sat up a little straighter. Then she did something interesting. She stood up, excused herself from Mr. Build-A-Deck, and walked toward the back of the bowling alley, phone in hand. She was looking for a quiet place to respond. "Samantha," Yeah, just chatting. Might be home late. Love you. I looked up, spotted her near the vending machines, nervously checking over her shoulder like she was some international spy passing classified information. Step 2. Gather information. I stood up, walked over to her without making a sound, and leaned against the soda machine like I was just there for a casual beverage. She jumped. Brandon. What are you doing here? Needed a drink, I said, nodding at the machine. Long day. Her eyes darted around, like her brain was desperately flipping through an escape plan. Didn't know you were into bowling. I'm not. Silence. Well, it's crazy running into you here, she said, forcing a laugh that could probably be used in an acting class under the section What Not to Do in Auditions. Super crazy, I agreed. Almost as crazy as you saying you're at girls' night when you're actually here with some guy. She blinked. What? I nodded toward lane 14. Him. The guy with the arm. The one you're whispering to like you're planning a bank heist. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. Brandon, Before she could finish, I held up my hand. Wait, let me guess. I tapped my chin. This is another old friend? A coworker? Maybe your long-lost cousin. She swallowed. It's not what it looks like. Oh, thank God, I said, feigning relief. Because it looks like you're on a date. Her jaw clenched. I am not on a date. Then what do you call it? She hesitated. And in that tiny moment, I saw it. The moment where she realized she had no good answer. Well, I prompted. She crossed her arms. I don't have to explain myself to you. I let out a low whistle. Now that is an interesting approach. Bold strategy. If I refuse to acknowledge reality, maybe it'll disappear technique. She groaned, rubbing her forehead like I was the one being difficult. Brandon, this is ridiculous. Oh, I agree. It is ridiculous. I mean, here I am, just a humble husband, out for a totally normal soda, when I suddenly find myself in the middle of a live-action soap opera. She glared. Are you done? Oh, I'm just getting started. At this point, she was 2 seconds away from walking off, but I wasn't done yet. Just answer me one thing, Sam, I said, my voice suddenly much calmer. Are you seeing someone else? She looked at me, and for the first time, she hesitated a little too long. No. Not, how could you ask me that? Just silence. I nodded, taking a step back. Got it. She opened her mouth to say something, but I was already walking away. Step 3. Be just the right amount of petty. I turned back at the last second. Oh, and Sam. She looked up. Tell your friend his bowling form is terrible. And with that, I walked out the door. I didn't go home right away. Not because I needed time to think, but because I knew exactly what was waiting for me the second I walked through the door, Samantha, ready to either gaslight me into oblivion or launch into some over-the-top performance about how I was misunderstanding everything. I wasn't in the mood for either. Instead, I made a quick stop at my brother Chris's place. The second I walked in, he took one look at me, handed me a beer, and said, So how bad was it? I took the beer, sat down, and exhaled. Let's just say, if I ever start doubting my intelligence, I'll just remember that Samantha thought a bowling alley was a great place to be sneaky. Chris winced. Oof. That bad. Oh, worse, I said, taking a sip. She actually tried to tell me it wasn't what it looked like. Which, by the way, is the universal phrase for, this is exactly what it looks like, but I need time to think of a better lie. Chris nodded. Classic. So, what's the next move? That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? I had all the proof I needed, maybe not in a courtroom sense, but in the I'm not a fool sense. Samantha was cheating. She wasn't going to admit it, but at this point, she didn't need to. I have no idea, I admitted. I mean, what do I do? Confront her again? Play dumb and see how far she takes it? Go full soap opera and dramatically throw my ring on the table? Chris thought about it for a second. You could make her squirm a little. That got my attention. Go on. Play it cool. Act like you believe her nonsense. See how long she keeps up the charade. He smirked. Maybe she'll confess out of guilt. I snorted. Yeah, because Samantha is just overflowing with guilt. Fair point, he said, leaning back. But still, might be fun to watch her struggle. And that's when I decided, yeah, I was going to mess with her. Not in some ridiculous, vengeful way. No hidden cameras or fake alibis. Just a simple, well-executed, slow-burn mind game. If she wanted to treat me like a fool, I'd give her the perfect opportunity to prove just how far she'd take it. So, an hour later, I walked into my house like nothing had happened. Samantha was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she wasn't waiting for me to walk in. She glanced up, forcing a casual smile. "Hey, you're home late." I shrugged. "Stopped by Chris's." She nodded, then hesitated. "Listen, about earlier." "Oh, don't worry about it," I interrupted, waving my hand dismissively. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" I flopped onto the recliner, stretching out. "I overreacted." "You're right, it was nothing. I just wasn't expecting to see you there, and, I let my imagination run wild." She blinked. "Once. Twice." "Oh. Well, yeah, exactly." I smiled. "Glad we're on the same page." And then, the best part, I changed the subject. Completely. Just moved right along like I had the attention span of a goldfish. "So, what's on TV?" I asked, grabbing the remote. Samantha hesitated again. I could see the gears turning in her head. This wasn't the reaction she was expecting. She had been preparing for a fight, or a dramatic discussion, or maybe even another round of forced, half-hearted lies. But me? Acting like it was no big deal? That threw her off. She swallowed. Just some reality show." "Nice," I said, clicking through the channels. "Oh, hey. Look, a bowling tournament. Maybe we should take up bowling, since you're such a fan and all." And there it was, the smallest, quickest flicker of panic in her expression. She recovered fast, forcing a laugh. "Oh, come on. I went one time. That doesn't make me a fan." I grinned. "True. But you looked like you were having a great time." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Yeah, well, I was just catching up with an old friend." Of course, I nodded. "Like I said, no big deal." She nodded back, clearly still unsure of what was happening. But for now, I had planted the seed. The longer I played it cool, the more she'd sweat. The game had officially begun. The next morning, I kept it up. She was up early, already dressed, when I walked into the kitchen. "Going to the gym?" I asked, like I hadn't already memorized her new routine. Yeah," she said, grabbing her water bottle. "Twice today or just once?" She hesitated. Just once." "Ah, taking it easy today," I said, smirking as I poured my coffee. She squinted at me. "What's with you?" I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "You're acting weird." "Weird?" I feigned innocence. "Nah, just relaxed." I sipped my coffee. "It's nice, trusting your wife. Not jumping to conclusions. Just living life stress-free." She stared at me for a second longer, then forced a laugh. "Right. Well, I'll be back later. Enjoy." I called after her as she left. And just like that, I had my confirmation she didn't like this. She wasn't relieved that I was letting it go. She was suspicious. Uncomfortable. And that was fun to watch. For the next few days, I kept the act going. Whenever she mentioned going out with the girls, I'd smile and say, "Oh, tell Taylor I said hi." Which, of course, made her twitch every time. Whenever she checked her phone and quickly turned the screen away, I'd casually ask, "Everything good?" in the sweetest, most innocent voice possible. And the best part? The longer I played it cool, the more paranoid she got. By the end of the week, I caught her watching me. Like she was trying to figure out if I really believed her, or if I was messing with her. Spoiler alert, I was definitely messing with her. But here's the thing about people like Samantha. When they start losing control of a situation, they panic. And when they panic, they make mistakes. So it wasn't surprising when, on Friday night, she slipped up in the most spectacular way possible. She was in the bathroom, getting ready to go out with the girls again, when her phone, sitting on the counter, lit up with a new text. And right there, on the screen, was a name I hadn't seen before. Ryan. "So, same time tonight?" And just like that, the game was over. Samantha had exactly 3 seconds before her phone screen dimmed. 3 seconds before the name Ryan and his not-so-subtle text disappeared from view. 3 seconds before she turned around and saw me standing in the doorway, casually drying my hands on a towel like I hadn't just seen everything. I didn't rush, didn't make a sound, just stood there, watching. And then, right on cue, Samantha reached for her phone. She grabbed it fast, flipping it over like she was suddenly very concerned about screen damage. "Everything good?" I asked, my tone the perfect mix of curiosity and indifference. She froze for half a second before looking up, smiling just a little too hard. "Yeah, just confirming plans." "Ah," I nodded. "With Taylor?" There was the briefest flicker of hesitation. "Yep, right." I tossed the towel onto the counter. "Well, tell Taylor I said hi. And tell Ryan I said, I pretended to think for a moment. Actually, never mind. I don't know Ryan, do I? Samantha didn't blink, didn't move, but I could practically hear her brain short-circuiting. And that? That was my favorite moment so far. Now, let's talk about what a normal person would do in this situation. A normal person, if caught red-handed, might try to explain. Maybe attempt some weak excuse. Something along the lines of, "Oh, Ryan is just a coworker. We're planning a surprise party for Taylor." But Samantha? No. Samantha went for something much, much more full. "I don't know a Ryan." Oh, this was beautiful. I stared at her, genuinely impressed. "You don't know a Ryan?" "Nope." "Interesting." I folded my arms. "Because Ryan seems to know you. And he seems very confident that you two have plans tonight." She forced a laugh. "Oh, wait. I do know a Ryan. I just forgot for a second." "Of course," I said, nodding slowly. "Easy mistake. Must happen all the time." She was still gripping her phone, holding it tight like it might suddenly explode and solve all her problems. I sighed dramatically. "All right, Sam, let's hear it. Who's Ryan?" She licked her lips, thinking way too hard. "He's a friend." "Ah." I nodded. "A friend who texts you about same time tonight?" Her fingers twitched. He helps with my workouts sometimes." "Oh, Ryan's a trainer," I said, like I had just learned the most interesting fact in the world. "Wow, makes sense. Gyms have been doing it all wrong. Who needs an official training program when you can just text your personal Ryan?" She sighed. "Brandon." No, this is great." I cut her off, grinning. "I mean, here I was thinking you were sneaking around behind my back. But now? Now I feel terrible for ever doubting you. Clearly, you were just working on your fitness." "Brandon, stop," she snapped, and there it was, the first crack in her fake composure. I shrugged. "Just trying to understand, Sam. I mean, most people wouldn't need to hide their trainer's name like a state secret, but hey, what do I know?" She clenched her jaw. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." "Am I?" I tilted my head. "Because it seems like you're panicking a little for something that's nothing." "I'm not panicking," she shot back, but her voice had that slight edge, just enough to tell me she was absolutely panicking. I let the silence hang for a moment, watching her fidget, waiting for whatever excuse she was going to pull out next. But instead, she changed tactics. She exhaled, shoulders dropping. "Look, I didn't want to say anything because I knew you'd react like this, but Ryan is just a guy I met at the gym. We've hung out a couple of times, that's all." "Uh-huh." She crossed her arms. "And before you go there, no, it's not like that. He's just easy to talk to." There it was. The "he just understands me" defense. Classic. I nodded, pretending to consider it. "Got it. So, this has nothing to do with why you've been lying about your plans for weeks." Her eyes narrowed. "I haven't been lying." "Oh, sorry, you're right. You've just been strategically avoiding the truth." She let out a frustrated sigh. "Why are you even doing this?" "Oh, I don't know, Sam," I said, voice thick with sarcasm. "Maybe because I'm curious about why my wife suddenly has a mysterious new friend she conveniently forgot to mention." She rubbed her temples like I was the problem. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "Oh, totally. I mean, what kind of husband wouldn't love finding out his wife has a secret texting buddy she hangs out with?" She threw her hands up. "It's not like I cheated." I barked out a laugh. "Oh, well, that's amazing." "What?" "The fact that you even had to say that," I said, shaking my head. "Like, wow, Samantha, thanks for clarifying that you totally haven't done anything questionable while sneaking around behind my back. Super reassuring." She clenched her fists. "You know what? I don't have to deal with this right now." And with that, she grabbed her bag and stormed toward the door. "Oh, no. No way." "Oh, so we're running now?" I called after her. "That's the plan? Just storm off like I'm the bad guy here." She didn't even turn around. Just yanked open the door and walked out, slamming it behind her. I stared after her, letting out a long, slow exhale. Well, that was easy. She had nothing. No real excuse, no backup plan. Just weak, last-minute lies and the desperate hope that I'd be fool enough to buy them. And now? Now she was officially in panic mode. Perfect. Because if she thought that was bad, she had no idea what was coming next. Samantha had stormed out like she was the one who had just caught me sneaking around with some guy named Ryan. That was the funniest part of all this. How quickly she had flipped the script, as if me asking obvious questions somehow made her the victim. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. She wasn't running to clear her head or get some fresh air, she was going straight to him. And honestly, that was fine by me. In fact, that made things easier. See, I had a plan. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't involve public humiliation or some grand confrontation. No yelling, no begging, no throwing things across the room like a bad soap opera. I wasn't interested in any of that. I just wanted out. And if she thought she was the only one capable of making moves in secret, well, she was in for a surprise. By the time she got back later that night, probably expecting a fight, or at least some passive-aggressive silence, I had already set everything in motion. She walked in, dropping her bag by the door. Brandon. I didn't look up from the laptop. Sam. She hesitated. She was expecting something different. A cold shoulder, maybe. More sarcastic jabs. Instead, I just kept scrolling, typing something every now and then. After a few seconds, she cleared her throat. Are we going to talk about what happened earlier? Talk? I repeated. Nah, I think we're good. She frowned. What's that supposed to mean? I shut my laptop and stretched like I had all the time in the world. It means I've got nothing left to say. Her eyes narrowed. Brandon, don't be childish. Oh, no worries there, I said, standing up. See, childish would be me pretending like this situation still has a chance of working out. Childish would be me standing here, waiting for you to come up with your next excuse. But I'm not doing that. I gestured toward the coffee table, where I had neatly stacked some documents. Samantha's gaze flicked toward them. What's that? I smiled. Oh, just a little something I put together while you were out. Since you're obviously so busy these days, I figured I'd save you some time. She stepped forward cautiously, picking up the first sheet. As she read, her face shifted from confusion to something much more satisfying. You're kidding. Nope. I popped the P for emphasis. Divorce papers. Already signed on my end. Her jaw tightened. So that's it? You're just done. I nodded. Oh, 100% done. Like, all the way done. I pointed to a second set of papers. And since I know how much you love surprises, I went ahead and drafted a move-out agreement too. You know, to keep things simple. Her grip on the paper tightened. You can't just make decisions like this without talking to me first. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, you want to talk now? That's interesting. Where was all this communication energy when you were sneaking off to see Ryan? She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Because what could she even say at this point? The usual tricks, deflection, gaslighting, playing the victim, they weren't gonna work. She could tell. I get the house, I continued, since I'm the only one who actually pays the mortgage. You've got 60 days to figure out your next step. Though, something tells me you'll be moving in with someone a lot sooner than that. Samantha glared. This is ridiculous. No, Sam, I corrected. This is consequences. Something you apparently thought you were immune to. She scoffed, tossing the papers back onto the table. I should have known you'd pull something like this. I laughed. Pull something? Sam, you cheated. You lied badly. And you're mad at me for handling it efficiently? I didn't, she started. But even she couldn't finish that sentence with a straight face. I grabbed my laptop, ready to wrap things up. Look, I could drag this out. I could make it messy. But honestly, I don't want to waste another second of my life on someone who clearly checked out months ago. She crossed her arms, tilting her head like she was still searching for some kind of loophole. So that's it? You're just fine with throwing everything away? I met her eyes. No, Sam. You threw it away. I'm just making sure the trash gets taken out. She didn't say anything. Just stood there, lips pressed together, hands curled into fists at her sides. She wasn't sad. Not really. She was just mad that I had taken control of the situation before she had a chance to. Finally, she exhaled sharply, shaking her head. You know what? Fine. If this is what you want, then fine. Fantastic, I said, grinning. Glad we're on the same page. I turned, heading toward the hallway, but stopped just before leaving the room. Oh, one last thing. She glanced up. What now? I smirked. You might want to text Ryan back. Wouldn't want him thinking you stood him up. She grabbed a pillow off the couch and threw it at me. I dodged easily, laughing as I walked away. Best decision I'd ever made. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel